For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jen Greenleaf. And just like Janelle said, I am a really proud member of the youth team here at Trinity. You probably have not seen me, for those of you who do not have kids or interact with kids, and that's because I tend to hang out in the back of the church. I am up there running the slides. I'm doing audio visual for our live streamers. Hey, live streamers. Hi, Mom. Or I'm hanging out in the back with the kids before we go down to our Sunday school on Sunday mornings. So if I haven't had a chance to meet you, hi. In fact, I was sitting up there where Daniela is this morning one Sunday a couple months ago when Pastor Brian approached me and he said, Jennifer, I'm doing this class on how to preach and teach the Bible, and I think you should join it and try out. So the distance from there to here is not very far physically, but it is quite a large distance. And so as I sit here and I look out over the people who are here, I'm just really grateful that I see an entire room full of friends, and my microphone, there we go. Full of family, full of friends, full of support. And so thank you guys for giving me the privilege of being able to bring the word today. As Janelle mentioned, if you do know anything about me, you probably know two things. One is that I am a proud West Virginian. And the second one is that I love hanging out with youth. So let me do a little bit to flesh that out and give you guys a little bit more context about who it is who's talking to you this morning. No introduction would be complete without an introduction to my family. You will see them up here. That is my mom and my dad and my nephew, who's really kind of a little brother to me, Evan. My parents were up here for my graduation from grad school a couple years ago. My parents are the ones who were actually from West Virginia. I was not born and raised there, but we spent all of our holidays there as children. We drove around on tractors. I kept an eye out for deer. I literally cleaned out ditches and culverts for fun. And it actually was really fun. And that's how I became such a lover of West Virginia. I got to move there a year after I got out of law school, and it really became my heart home. I swore I would never live north of the Mason-Dixon line again after moving there, and here we are 3.5 years later in New York City. The other picture might be my favorite / most important one, and that is because I do not have any human children of my own, but I do have a very cute cat named Nassau, who was in the previous slide, and he is a cantankerous little son of a gun. He is 18 years old and has been my constant companion. Here in New York, I proudly volunteer with our youth, but being in the youth ministry here is not the first time I've done that. When I was in West Virginia, I had an opportunity to serve as a youth director at a Baptist church down there for about 4 years. And this next slide has a couple pictures of my kiddos that I had there. They are one of only a very small group of people who is allowed to call me Jenny. I was fondly referred to as Aunt Jenny by this wonderful group of students for a little over 4 years. And so it was really a full circle moment when last year we got to take the youth from this church down to West Virginia, interact with the families of some of the students that I had served with and served for those past few years. Youth are just great. Janelle said it makes you feel young and cool to hang out with youth. If my mother were here, she would tell you it's more because I never grew up, and so I definitely align more with being a 12 to 15-year-old than a 40-some-year-old. But either way, I really love that, and I'm really privileged that the parents in the room give me the opportunity to hang out with their kids. This is not about me, though, today. What I really want to talk about today is sheep. And when I was really hoping that the VBS lesson was going to be about sheep this week. It was not. It was about fire. But I have found that over the past few months, sheep are kind of in our collective conscience societally. I don't know how many of you had a chance to see the movie The Sheep Detectives. Okay. Anytime you put Hugh Jackman and fluffy animals in a movie together, I'm there. And so I had an opportunity to go see this movie. And if you don't know the movie, without spoiling it, the premise of the movie is Hugh Jackman is a shepherd who mysteriously dies. And the police are ready to write it off. But in any good whodunit, you have to have somebody who's going to go and fix what the police do not. And so his sheep decide to solve his murder. I'm gonna give you guys a quick clip. This is just to give you the idea about like channeling your inner sheep, which is what we're gonna get into here in just a minute. So this is just a little clip from the movie about how these sheep think about God and about church. Take a look.
What is this?
This is the church where someone named God lives.
Who's God?
It's a bit confusing. God is a shepherd.
So he could be our shepherd?
No, because he's also a lamb.
What?
And he's also invisible. And he's made of bread. And he dams things.
Dams things? Like a beaver?
Yes.
So God is a big invisible lamb beaver made of bread?
Yes, and they eat him on Sundays.
Poor God.
Theology aside, I loved the fact that this movie tried to get into the mind of what it would be like to be a sheep. And if you watch the movie, you'll see that every single one of these sheep has a personality. They each have, history that leads them to be where they are. And they just do a phenomenal job. Go see a movie this afternoon and avoid the heat. When I watched this movie a couple weeks ago, it really reminded me of one of my most unique experiences that I had in West Virginia, which was I had been involved in state government. I spent about 10 years working for the state of West Virginia. And probably my weirdest assignment was that I somehow got tapped to be the Assistant Commissioner of Agriculture in West Virginia. Now, I told you that I grew up riding on tractors. I know nothing about agriculture, or at least knew nothing about agriculture. I killed every plant. I only had a hermit crab. I think I lost him once. I have no background to be in this job whatsoever, except for the fact that I'm the attorney there. So, like any good person who is given a task that they are not prepared for, I decide that I'm gonna learn everything there is about agriculture. And I go on this exploration across the state to do all of the agricultural things so that I can talk intelligently with people about farming. And I do all sorts of things. I go on a cattle drive. I go to a poultry processing facility. I learn how to butcher a hog. I bale hay. I milk a cow. That one was really fun, by the way. And I'd done this all for a few years. And there was one thing that I had not yet done, and that was I had not sheared a sheep. And I said, well, we've got to fix this. So I put up what I like to refer to as the bat signal or the sheep signal. And I started talking to everyone I knew. And I said, I need to shear a sheep. If you know somebody with sheep, if you know some place that I can go and do this, let me know. I really, really, really need to go shear a sheep. And so in the summer of 2022, I finally got a response to my sheep signal and got connected with the family of one of the West Virginia legislators that I had worked a lot with. And so in the middle of the summer of July 2022, I went up a couple hours outside of my home city of Charleston and sheared a sheep. This is a picture of me in the field with the sheep. This is not the actual shearing process, but you'll see it's really kind of a small backyard. That's what most of the farms are in West Virginia. 20 to 30, the woman who ran it, she and her husband had some chickens and they had some sheep. You will also notice that I have no hair in this picture, and that's because this was about 3 months into the chemotherapy that I was going through for cancer. So the timing was not exactly great, but I went up anyway. Now, I go there, I meet this woman who is in her 70s, a spry, strong 70s, but certainly not kind of that stereotypical, farmer guy. And she has graciously agreed to do this. And so we are in this small town operation. And I just want to paint the picture that we are grabbing a sheep and we are going into a stall about yay wide, 3-4 feet wide. And what we have to do is get this sheep to stay still enough so that we can take this very sharp object, this very pointy, kind of dangerous razor, and shear off all of this wool. Now, sheep, singular, really need to be sheared for a variety of reasons. They need it because it's super, super hot, right? Wool is heavy, that's why we wear it in the winter. So they need it off of their bodies. They also need it gone because it gets caught on things, it gets stuck, and they can get trapped in vines or thorns or all sorts of different things. So we are in this stall, me and this woman. I am not at my strongest at this point, just for context. And the goal is that we have to take this sheep and literally ram your hip up against this sheep and hold him in place so that the other person can start shearing off the wool. I have never been more exhausted in my life. We got through 2 sheep. It was at the end, we were both like, we're done. But as we're sitting there in this stall and these, this one sheep is in there, the other sheep outside are baaing and they are freaking out because their friend is in here, and I'm sure that they don't know what's going on. And I remember thinking to myself, like, why is the sheep so cantankerous about this? It's good for them, right? It's what they need. It's healthy. They are so much happier when it's done. And they know the woman who's in here with them. This is not a stranger. I'm a stranger. But this other woman is not. Why are they fighting this so much? So I started to try to get myself into the mind of a sheep, which is what I'm going to challenge all of us to do this morning by looking at what we commonly refer to as the parable of the lost sheep. This is in Luke 15, beginning at verse 1. If you have an opportunity to pull it up on your phone or in the Pew Bible, please do that. But I will have the verses up here as well. We here at Trinity tend to use the ESV. I'm using the NIV primarily because it's the Bible that I've had for years, and that was what I was doing when I wrote this. So we're going to go from the NIV. Here's our scripture. Now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." Then Jesus told them this parable. "Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, 'Rejoice with me, I have found my lost sheep.' I tell you that in the same way, there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent." The word of the Lord. So as you guys could tell, the story is told in the context of Jesus talking to the Pharisees, and the Pharisees are scoffing at the company that Jesus is keeping. And so one of the things that I always taught my youth in West Virginia and try to do here as well is when you read a parable, you have to figure out what role you're supposed to be playing. Which person are you supposed to be inhabiting? Jesus is challenging the Pharisees to take on the role of the shepherd, saying, wouldn't you want all of your sheep back? Wouldn't you want to get them all together? I'm gonna have us take a slightly different perspective. And specifically, we're gonna channel our inner sheep today, and we are going to put ourselves in the perspective or in the frame of the sheep that gets lost. So let's read that part of the story again, just with the focus on the sheep. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, "Rejoice with me, I have found my lost sheep." Because the parable is called the parable of the lost sheep, you would think there would be a lot of action going on around the lost sheep. But if you read and you really listen to what's going on, the lost sheep does nothing. We know nothing about what is going on. In fact, the lost sheep is a totally passive participant in this story. We have no context for why they are there, how they got out of trouble. And even the way that the parable is written, the shepherd is the one who is described as losing the sheep, right? It doesn't say the sheep wandered off. It says the shepherd lost the sheep. I'm not an actor, but my understanding is that whenever you do method acting, and I'm here in New York, so maybe there are some people who can clue me in on this. When you do method acting, you really try to get into the mind of what of what your character is thinking and how they would act and kind of live there. So we have 2 questions to ask ourselves to figure out what this sheep is thinking. The first question is, why did the sheep run away? The parable doesn't tell us. I can think of a million reasons that a sheep would run away. Maybe they're curious. Maybe there's some nicer clover over there. Maybe they fell asleep and didn't wake up when the rest of the herd left. Maybe they were ticked off that the shepherd was making them move and they just didn't want to, right? Sheep are stubborn creatures. Maybe there was a wildfire in Canada that made the air really foggy and they couldn't figure out where the shepherd was and they lost track of where the shepherd was. We don't get an explanation, and like many things in the Bible, I think this is significant and intentional because it doesn't matter why the sheep got lost. Likewise, the question is, what is the sheep doing when he gets lost, when he gets, when he's off on his own and away from the rest of the flock? We also don't know. It could be that the sheep is in tons of trouble, that the sheep is stuck in thorns, that he has fallen over a hillside, that he has rolled over in a ditch, that he is in some sort of a danger, that he's gotten trapped behind a fence. Or it could be that the sheep is totally happy, kind of living his best life, found a really good patch of food that he wasn't going to get to otherwise, made some other sheep friends out there. That also doesn't matter for purposes of the parable that we're looking at, right? Because the truth is, no matter where the sheep was, no matter how the sheep got there, no matter what the sheep is thinking, the sheep is lost. He is away from the flock and he's away from the shepherd. Come on, there we go. All right, does everybody have their inner sheep? Okay, everybody thinking their inner sheep, good. With that in mind, we're going to watch this drama unfold from the perspective of the sheep. So the parable starts with the idea that the shepherd is with the sheep. He notices that there is one missing, and then he goes off to find it. Our little guy doesn't see any of this because our guy is already gone. But what he does see is what happens when he is found by the shepherd. And that's verse 5. When he finds it, he being the shepherd here, when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. So let's break that down by focusing on just a few key words. The first important word in this is the word when. When he finds it. Not if, but when. We know for a fact that the sheep is found, and we know for a fact that he will be found. The end of this story is never in doubt. If you hop back one verse to verse 4, you will see that the parable says, doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? Until he finds it. In other words, success is guaranteed. Sometimes when I read passages like that where the certainty and the outcome is foreordained, I tend to do a little bit of revisionist history here, and I tend to replace the word when with if. Like, if the shepherd happens to find this sheep, then he'll be really, really happy, as though there's some sort of conditional outcome and it's hypothetical whether or not it's going to happen or not. But that's not what happens here. It is absolutely for certain that the shepherd is going to find the sheep. How does the shepherd in real life make that happen? It's because the shepherd never gives up. No matter how far the sheep has wandered away, no matter how long he has to look, no matter how many days or hours or fields he has to cover, that sheep is going to be found. I struggle with this sometime, and I think maybe we all do, this idea that it isn't a hypothetical, that it is a certainty that the sheep is going to be found. And I think it's because we have trouble conceptualizing what it is like to have someone who will chase you that relentlessly, who will go after you with that much determination and fervency to find the sheep. We think that maybe what we have done, we're so guilty about having gotten away from this flock. Oh my gosh, I just closed my eyes for a second and all of a sudden I'm gone. Or, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I made this very selfish mistake and I'm over here and now I'm in trouble and I don't know what to do. Remember that the parable doesn't tell us how the sheep got lost because it doesn't matter. The shepherd knows though. And the shepherd still doesn't care. I mean, he cares, but he doesn't care in the sense that it's not gonna stop him from pursuing his sheep. It's not gonna stop him from taking the steps that he needs in order to bring them back together. And so the thing that I think that the sheep is thinking when he sees the shepherd start to come towards him is, wow. You as a sheep, you as a member of the flock, you are never, ever, ever beyond finding. There's nothing that you can do to outrun the shepherd, to hide from the shepherd, to escape him bringing you back into the fold. Which brings us to the second key word of the parable, the word finds. Remember, it says, when he finds it, when the shepherd finds the sheep. How are we so sure that the sheep is going to be found? How are we so sure that the shepherd is going to succeed? Because the shepherd knows where to look. I lose things all the time. There is a set of keys in my apartment right now that I have no idea where they are. I lose things chronically. And when I do that, as I think we all do, we sit there and we go, okay, where was the last place that I saw this? And we retrace our steps and we think about what we were doing, and we maybe go into the kitchen and we say, I don't think I put them in the refrigerator, but maybe I put them in the refrigerator. And you open the door and they're not there. And then you go through every bag that you've had for the last month and you call places and you do whatever. You're trying to figure out where this inanimate object is by going back over your steps. When you're trying to search for a person or something with free will or some sort of will, it becomes a little bit more complicated because it's not just about you at that point. It's about the other person. So if I'm at an amusement park and I lose my family members, I am probably not gonna find my dad on Space Mountain. I may find my family eating ice cream. I may find them tired and back at the hotel, but there are certain places that I know not to look. There are certain places that I know are more likely than others. Where would they go? What are they thinking? What was their mood at the time? What were they reacting to? The better you know somebody, the easier it is to think about where they might go. And the same thing is true here for the sheep and the shepherd. He knows you. First things first, he knew that the sheep was missing. And if anybody has ever looked at a flock of sheep, they all kind of look the same. They're all woolly, they're all kind of dirty, they look all the same. So for the shepherd to even notice in the first place that the sheep was missing means that he had to know something unique about that sheep. He had to know that sheep was supposed to be there, where it was supposed to be, what it looked like down to its very fiber, to be able to identify that it wasn't there. He also knows where to go looking for the sheep. If you have a sheep who loves to eat, you're gonna check out the really good field with the clover. If you have a sheep that's kind of a loner, you're gonna look under a tree, you're gonna look off in a faraway field. Whatever it is that sheep's personality is, that is gonna drive where you look, how you prioritize where you're going. There's a lot of stuff in the Bible about how well God knows us. You know, before you were born, he knit you together in the womb. The hairs on our head are numbered. He knows the plans that he has for us. And we hear all of that, and I think sometimes we can sit with it on a very intellectual level, or it's so ubiquitous that we just kind of pass it by. But what does it mean to actually be known by God? To be known so well that when you get lost, he knows where to go. He knows that you're missing. He knows where to go. He knows where he's going to find you. And by the way, if he knows all of those things, he also probably knew when you left, or to take it a step back, he knew when you were going to leave. What does it mean to be that known and that loved? So again, we're channeling our sheep. And when you see that happen and you see the shepherd coming towards you and you ask yourself, what's going on here? The only thing that the sheep can be thinking is that you are fully known and fully loved. The Lord knows you. He knows everything about you. He knows where you're going to be. He knows what you're going to be doing. He knows what you did to get in this place in this situation in the first place, and he loves you anyway. And he's willing to take the steps that are necessary to bring you back. And now we get to my favorite part of the verse. Because if you remember, when the shepherd finds the sheep, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Y'all, I have never tried to herd sheep, but I cannot imagine that it is an easy task. You are out in the middle of the wilderness. There are untold risks and dangers and things that you don't know. You're generally by yourself or with a small group of people. There's not a whole lot of support. There's not a lot of barriers. And so many different things could have happened to this sheep, as we talked about. He could be in a ditch. He could be trapped. He could be stuck in brambles and trying to pull himself free. He could have gotten mixed in with another herd. There's so many things that could have happened. And because the shepherd is willing to go to the literal ends of the earth to find the sheep, the shepherd has got to be exhausted. In the real world, the shepherd would probably get there. He probably would not have eaten very well. He would have been a little hangry. He would have been a little tired. He would have been a little frustrated that the way he had his day planned was not the way that his day was going to work out, right? He lost a day of travel. He lost getting to market on the right day. We can forgive the shepherd if he went through all of this and was a little frustrated when he got to the sheep, right? All of us have been children who have ticked off our parents from time to time, right? Or we've done something that we're afraid that somebody's gonna find out because we know when they find it out, they're gonna be frustrated or they're gonna be mad, right? Aggravated. And so you have this picture of, I'm gonna get found and that's great, but I'm gonna have to pay the price for what I did. And so stepping back into my sheep posture for a minute, I look at that sheep and I say, that sheep, probably when he sees the shepherd coming over, has a little mix of relief and a little bit of terror, right? Like, what is gonna happen? How am I gonna be able to make this up? I'm gonna have to pay for this. Not so. Here, the shepherd comes bounding over the hill to find his sheep. He comes with joy, filled with extra strength when he sees the sheep coming over. He puts the sheep on his shoulders. He doesn't make the sheep walk home on his own. He carries the sheep the whole way. Filled with gratitude that the sheep is back, he does not take him back to the flock to be thrown in with all of the other sheep. He takes him to his home, the shepherd's home. And filled with extra energy, which I would not have after I've done this, he plans a party to celebrate the fact that the sheep has been home. Finding the sheep brings energy to the shepherd. It brings joy to the shepherd, and that joy fuels a response that is so gracious, that is so beyond anything that we could possibly conceive of, that sheep sitting up there is probably going, oh my gosh, this is something that I could not possibly have imagined, but I'm so glad it's here and I'm so glad that it's mine. So let's go back to the beginning. We called this the parable of the lost sheep. And I guess my question for you guys is, does that title fit the story? Is this really a parable of a lost sheep? Remember what we've learned. We've learned that the shepherd won't give up until he has found his sheep. He will find the sheep. The success is absolutely guaranteed. The shepherd knows where the sheep is. He knew that the sheep was gonna leave. He knew that the sheep was missing. He knew where he was gonna find them, and he knew when he was gonna find them, and there he was. So if all of that is true, is the sheep ever really lost? Theologically, and in this story, and from the perspective of the shepherd, no. The sheep is never lost. The shepherd knows where he is at every moment. But today, we're trying to be sheep. We're not trying to be shepherds today, we're trying to be sheep. And so the question is, from the perspective of the sheep, Is the sheep lost? And the answer unequivocally is yes. The sheep has gotten away, and he cannot find his way back without the help of the shepherd. How did the sheep get that way? Not because of anything that the shepherd did. I think it's because he took his eyes off the shepherd. If I'm fixed on my shepherd, and I know where to look, and I follow his lead, I will always be with him. I cannot get lost because he is the one that I'm supposed to stay true to. The second that I pivot away, the second that I turn my back, even if he still knows where I am, I don't know where I am. And that's what happened to our sheep. Now, this is all relatable to us, very much so. Or at least I will say that I speak for myself on that. I find so many times that I wake up or snap to, and I realize that my focus is somewhere that it doesn't need to be, that I've gotten myself into a situation where the priorities that I have, the things that are drawing my attention, the place where my eyes are focused is not on the shepherd. It's on something else. It's my job, it's my family, it's my apartment, it's the gym, it's success, fame, happiness, any number of different things. And we live in a city where distraction is the name of the game, and it is so easy to get distracted by the things that are around us. And so sometimes we just lose track. Now, sometimes we do run off, but I think probably the more pernicious thing that we tend to do is we just let our focus shift a little bit, and we keep going and forget to go back to that North Star of who the shepherd is and what it is that he wants for us, what it is that he wants us to be doing, and who it is that he is. So, as the worship team comes back up, what do we do with this truth? What do we do with this idea that we are never lost, but we can feel and get lost? The simple answer is this: we turn our eyes back to the shepherd. That is a lot easier said than done. I'm gonna break it down into 2 steps. So the first thing, and this is the step I skip so often, is sit with the truth. Sit with the emotional weight of the fact that we serve a God who will not stop looking for us, who knows every single thing that we have done, good or bad, before we do it. And he loves us anyway. And no matter what it is that we do, he will always come after us. He embodies relentless pursuit. And there's nothing we can do about it. You're his, and he will have you for himself. When you get that perspective on who our God is, it should make it a little more enticing, a lot more enticing to keep your eyes focused on him at all points. But still, it's hard, right? We have that guilt because we know what we've done, and we sometimes trick ourselves into thinking that whatever it is that we've done is too much for the shepherd to handle, that we've gone too far, that we've gotten ourselves into too much trouble, that we're just too far gone. It's too much of a hassle, and it's just not true. He will come for you. You are never lost, and he is waiting to carry you back. You have to turn your eyes back. And may I add, you don't have to do it all on your own, because remember, the only thing that the shepherd saw when he looked at the sheep was a sheep. And he saw the sheep, and they made eye contact. And then from there, the shepherd took care of everything else. So the big step is really just taking the step and turning back and calling out to the Lord to bring you back home, to fix your eyes on him. And when you do that, things will start to fall into place. Let's pray real quick. Father God, thank you for being the best shepherd. Thank you for loving us beyond anything that we could imagine or ever deserve. And thank you for sharing that love with us over and over and over and over again. Help us keep our eyes fixed on you and come back to you sooner rather than later, because when we're away from you, we're the ones who miss out on the relationship, on the opportunity to be with you. Be our shepherd. In Christ's name.